I remember being in my 20s and thinking about how far away being 30 was, and whether I'd even make it that far. Here I am at 54, planning my early retirement at 55 next year, and realising how fast time goes, especially when you're older. My name's Steve. I wanted to share with you a little bit about what my wife and I are planning to do next year when I turn 55. I'm looking at retiring early, and I wanted to share, rather than details of exactly how we're going to do this, it's more about the why we're going to do this. And the reason for that is, when I've gone into numbers before, specific numbers, I'm constantly getting told your numbers don't add up, your numbers don't add up. Now that might be for them, but not for me. You know, I'll tell you what numbers don't add up. The numbers that don't add up for me are me going to work every single day. I'm self-employed, I do delivery driving, I've got a fluctuating income. And what doesn't add up for me is constantly, month in, month out, and time is really flying now, right? The struggling to pay the bills and just working just to pay the bills. I don't have anything left over at the end of each month. All of that needs to go. And most of the outgoings that we have are related to the house. So the house has to go. Now, I know quite a lot of people have said, yeah, rent the house out, rent the house out. Now, I don't know which part they don't get about this house is costing us a fortune. It's on an interest-only mortgage, which has to be repaid at some point. Renting the house out is not going to make any difference to that whatsoever. They're still going to be wanting their money at the end of the day. And I don't want it anymore. I don't. I want the freedom. I want the freedom of not being tied to the house. I want the freedom of not having that massive expense going out each month. You know, my mortgage company even offered me to put the mortgage onto like a fixed rate, because we're on standard variable at the moment for whatever reason. We have our reasons, mainly because we don't have to have charges when we clear it. But they offered to put it onto a fixed rate. Well, yeah, that's going to really help me, isn't it? You know, I'm planning on selling it next year, pay off the mortgage. I'm going to have thousands of pounds worth of charges before paying it off early, and it's just delaying the inevitable. It's not going to, putting on a fixed rate is not going to get it cleared. Not going to get the mortgage cleared. It's not going to get the it's not going to get my payment removed from my outgoings. So yeah, so that's what doesn't add up to me, is the hundreds and hundreds of pounds that I'm paying out or working to just pay to then live my life. I haven't got any spare to live my life. I'm not going to go immersing myself into a brand new career. And I know I've had some comments, well-meaning I'm sure, but comments saying, yeah, just work for a couple more years and then put more into your pension pot. Then you'll be in a better financial position. Yeah, well, you could say that, couldn't you? If I did that for 2 years, I bet if I came back on a video and said, yeah, I've done that, they'll go, yeah, just a couple more years, just a couple more years. You know, I don't know what's around the corner, right? The phrase life's too short is really hitting home right now. I'm constantly seeing and hearing about people who have literally waited that little bit extra and then died, or, you know, had a health problems, or lost a partner or something like that. Now, you know, currently my wife and I are in pretty good shape health-wise. We haven't really got, we're certainly not on any prescription medication for anything, you know, which is, I think, actually pretty good. Bearing in mind my wife is 60 this year and I'm 55 next year. So while we're healthy, we have an opportunity to take my pension that I built up while I was working for a high street bank 9 or so years ago. I worked there for 13 years. We've got the opportunity to have to access my pension, sell the property, hopefully with some equity, get all the money in the bank, and then have some freedom. How long will that last? I don't care. I want to do it now while we can, because time and health is not on our side. Eventually it's going to go downhill. Our age, you know, stats say because of our age, our health is gradually going to go down. Now, yes, we might live to 100. We might live till well into our 80s. Yeah, that may be so. But I'm not going to be able to enjoy life much. I'm not going to be able to do a lot other than sit in a chair when I'm 100 years old, am I? Right? So I want to do this now. And then if we run out of money, we'll deal with the flack afterwards. Reckless, might be, but you could say that about anything, couldn't you? You know, stress is a massive killer in the UK or around the world, really. You know, I was in a high-paid job very high paid job when I was in the bank. I think anyway, I was on a very good income. We never had to worry about the bills, never had to think, am I going to make this bill this month? Because we had all the bills covered and we had lots of surplus and we enjoyed our holidays and everything else. But I still didn't have freedom. I had massive stress. I mean, the stress, if I'd stayed there, it was going to kill me. I've got grey streaks on my hair. One of them turned up overnight after a really nasty conversation that I had to have with a manager, and I literally woke up the next day with this grey streak in my hair. You know, that's possibly going to take its toll later on in my life, maybe. I don't know. So I want to get out now. I have to. You know, so when I finally took redundancy and I got out of there, and I went self-employed, and I've been self-employed for the last 9 years. Initially, when I was doing delivery driving, it was really, really lucrative, especially just after 2019 and 2020. You know, things went absolutely through the roof. I was earning, hour-to-hour basis, I was actually earning more than what I was in the bank. I wasn't working anywhere near as many hours, but I could earn monthly what I was earning in the bank quite easily. But you know, since then, as things happen, you know, the bubble burst and the income's gone down, the interest rates have gone massively up, which of course have massively affected our mortgage payments. So we're feeling the squeeze on both ends. Our outgoings have increased, what with the cost of living and everything else, and income kind of diving. And I don't want to immerse myself into a full-time career again. I really don't, because the stress will kill me. So now we're trapped in this cycle of, you know, constantly just working to pay the bills, and it's not conducive for a healthy lifestyle going forward. So something has to change. You know, they say the definition of madness is keep doing the same things and expecting different results. Well, you know, unless I change something, then we're going to carry on the same. In fact, it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, and we'll probably end up going bankrupt, losing the house, and be in a much worse position. So we have an opportunity, a golden opportunity, to make a massive difference to our lives, and it might be temporary, but do you know what? We're going to take that break, we're going to take that plunge, we're going to take that risk and go for it, and then we're going to decide, we're going to take a break and we're going to decide what we want to do after that, and we're going to have plenty of money in the bank, and there's lots and lots of different options. So you know, we're going to have that breathing space just to think about things and then decide. It doesn't have to be all laid out. The main thing is that the stress is reduced down to a bare minimum, and our outgoings are reduced down to a bare minimum, and then we live frugally. We can live frugally, you know, bet your bottom dollar. We have been living very, very frugally for the last few years, so that will be very easy for us. That's not the issue. So, you know, so I mentioned, you know, people saying rent the property out. You know, if we had no mortgage, that might be an option, possibly. But, you know, the last thing I want right now is, with that mortgage payment that I have to make each month, you know, I've already shown up as arrears on my credit file because I made an arrangement with the mortgage company. I didn't even realise, I wasn't told that that's what would happen. You know, if I knew that's what would happen, I wouldn't have actually made that arrangement. I'd have made the payment. I'd have found a way I'd have found the money. But anyway, that's a whole different complaint that I've got going on with them. But yeah, if you know, the last thing I want is the headache of dealing with a tenant that perhaps decides they're not going to pay their rent, and then they claim squatters' rights and we can't get rid of them, and then then we're absolutely stuffed when we come to want to sell the property. So no, I don't want that headache. We're just going to remove that completely. You know, I'm quite happy to not live in bricks and mortar, although, you know, we are considering moving to France, or at least having a property in France, and that will be bricks and mortar. It'll be paid outright, no mortgage. And that's one of the options that we're looking at. It's not definite yet, because we're in touch with people. We're making inquiries. We've got people looking into, you know, the visa situations for us. There's lots of different options there as well. And I'll make another video about that, you know, when we know exactly, because I've had a lot of questions about the visa situation. It's quite complicated, but you know, hundreds of thousands of people do it every year, or thousands of people do it every year, and likewise they do the same from France to the UK. So you know, it is achievable for a variety of circumstances, so we know it can be done. And the other thing is as well, you know, we've got potential equity locked up in the house that we need really to fulfill our plans. You know, if we're going to be buying a property in France, I'd rather do it from the equity in the property and not from my drawdown on my pension. That's there for our income. So, you know, I'm getting into the nitty-gritty, which I didn't really want to do, but my point is that the next 10 years will go incredibly fast. The last 10 years have gone incredibly fast. You know, we lost our dog last year. She was 14 14 years. I remember the day we got her. I remember it like yesterday, and 14 years just like that has just gone. It's incredible. And I know the next 10 years will go very, very, very quickly. The next 20 years will probably go very, very quickly if I last that long. You know, bearing in mind, my wife is 60 this year, I'm 55 next year. So she'll be 70 in 10 years' time. And time doesn't wait. Time waits for no man, right? It's just going to keep on going. It's not going to stop. You can't go back and change things. You know, people telling me, oh, well, you should have done this, should have done that. Pointless. Utterly pointless comment. You know, if I could change things, I'd jump in a time machine and go back and change things. Would I do that? Yeah, of course you would. You can't do that. So, you know, another thing that wasted a lot of time as well was my social life back in the day, you know, 20s, 30s. I wasted a lot of time just drinking at weekends and, you know, drinking at home in the evenings and that. Very, very unproductive time. Luckily, I gave up alcohol 7 years ago completely. It's the best thing I've ever done. I've been so much more productive. I've managed to manage my own pension in my SIP. I've doubled the money in there through various investments. I've talked about that in other videos. So yeah, so much more productive. Now, I'm not saying I'm not here to lecture. This is my life, and this is the choices that I've made in my life. I realised that it was a bad move for me continuing that social life, and so I stopped it. But that's not what this video is about. You know, this is about us taking our freedom back before time kind of catches up with us. That's what this is about. You know, and we're not worried about a lavish lifestyle. You can't take your money with you, and we haven't got much money to take with us anyway. But what we have got will buy us a lot of freedom for quite a long time. But for some people watching this, you know, you might think, well, I couldn't possibly live on that amount of money. I couldn't possibly live in a caravan, you know, for a period of time, for more than a couple of weeks or something on a holiday. That's fine. That's you, and this is me. I'm more than happy to live a very frugal lifestyle, and so's my wife. We both are. So a little bit more detail. You know, we're getting the house valued next month. That's the plan. We were going to wait till later on in the year, but we really want to know, you know, what do we need to do if the valuation is a lot lower than we expected. So we're going to get it valued next month. Ideally, we have about 100k equity. I've got 150k in a pension. It's actually a little bit more than that, and hopefully will be more than that by the time I take it. So 250k total. That's it, right? But that's it with massively reduced bills. We've already got a caravan. We're thinking about getting a tow vehicle. We've thought about narrowboat, canal boat, riverboat, motorhome, camper van, even a static caravan. Living in France, renting in France. Renting a place in England, maybe up north where properties are cheaper, buying a small property up north where properties are cheaper, or in Wales or in Scotland or something like that. All of these are options that have been on the table and, you know, still are till the last minute, really. So my wife's got a £400 a month pension, and we're looking at living on about £1,000 to £1,200 a month. So I'll be taking that from my drawdown. Flexible drawdown with my SIP, which is with HL, Hargreaves Lansdowne. So I'll be taking, you know, whatever I need to make up. So that'll be either £600 or £800 a month, or a year. Put it in the bank, put it in an ISA, and then draw it off from there. We think the ultimate plan will be to buy a house, cheap as chips, in France. Yes, you can get them very, very cheap, but it's not going to be all the contemporary, done up, you know, all beautifully presented and stuff like that. No, it's going to need a massive sweep out. It's going to need some possible structural stuff done to it, and all of that. Yeah, we'll have a little bit of money that we can throw into it, but the rest we can just gradually do things up. You know, we're going to buy somewhere that's habitable now. That's the plan, but needs a lot of decoration and looking after, really. Plumbing I can do some electrics, get it all signed off. I've got friends and family who can help as well with stuff like that. So really not a problem. I'm not going to be doing any sort of major construction work. I'm not going to be paying to do any major construction work. So this is why we're going to be spending some time in France. So that's the other plan as well, is either in the caravan, or, which we probably will do, you know, or a camper van or motorhome, whatever. We're going to get mobile. That's the main thing. So we've got a caravan existing. It's a lovely caravan. We know it inside out, and it works absolutely fine. There's nothing that's not working in it, apart from the porch light, which I can fix. So we're going to get a tow vehicle for that. is probably the most likely thing we'll do. But the main thing is we need to be mobile. Once we're mobile, and then we can get down to France, spend some time down there. We've got some areas earmarked that we really like, and there's lots of properties in those areas for sale. So we can have a look down there, spend some time there. Yeah, we can only spend up to 90 days there without a visa. So we'll do that. We can do a hell of a lot in a month. When you haven't got the treadmill of work and the the nagging of all the bills, and we're literally just living on the road, living very, very minimally, then in the rural areas as well, things are much cheaper in France. We'll be able to be very productive, much more productive than I would be if I was just taking a holiday or if I was still here. So yeah, so that's the plan. We could probably do a whole lot, in a month or two down there, buy a property, and then come back to the UK, and then go back down in another 3 months. And we'll have to factor that into our budget. We'll have to factor in, the cheapest way of getting across. Currently, if we want to go short trips, the ferry is actually the cheapest way with a car, but we'll see. That might change. Quite a few of you watching might think, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. I couldn't possibly do that. Well, don't then. That's fine, But if you're interested in watching our journey and seeing how that pans out, then, great. Subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. But what I do know is there's a lot of people who maybe don't necessarily comment, who are in a similar situation to ourselves, who are either better off or worse off or the same, and are planning the same and thinking, should I do this? Can I do this? I don't know. That's what these videos are about. I'm just documenting what we're doing, our particular situation. It's going to be different to your situation. But, if it means that in me documenting all of this, that you sort of see something happen and you think, well, actually, or see something I talk about and you think, well, actually, I wouldn't want to do that. Learn from our mistakes. That's absolutely fine. I'm happy to entertain. But I really do appreciate all the people who've watched the previous videos and subscribed to the channel. Helps the channel grow, helps get our story out there. Special thanks to the Frugal blog for your super thanks on the last video as well. Much appreciated. Big supporter of the channel. Thank you so much. And remember, this is actually this is classed as entertainment. This is not advice. And talking of advice, I get plenty of it in the comments, and I'm going to be doing a video on some interesting stuff that's been happening on another video soon. In the meantime, I appreciate you all watching. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.